Listeners, are you ready for your monthly literary adventure? We now have the BFF Book Club. Join us each month to explore a new book. After reading, connect with fellow book lovers and meet the author in a live interview. Can't make it live? Don't worry. We'll send you the recording. You can find all the upcoming book club selections at www.bookishflights.com/read/BFF book club. Hi, I'm Cara Infante, and this is Bookish Flights. In each episode, I chat with one bookish guest as we take some time to sample and savor the pairing recommendations from their bookish flight. We hope to give you suggestions to cultivate your TBR list and nurture your leisure time through books. In today's episode, I am chatting with Courtney Walsh. Courtney is the New York Times and USA Today best-selling author of several low-spice romance and contemporary women's fiction novels. She is a Carol Award winner, Christy Award finalist, and seeker of happy endings. More than anything, Courtney feels compelled to spread joy by writing lighthearted but poignant character-driven stories that provide a sweet, safe escape when life gets a little too heavy. In addition to writing novels, she has written 2 craft books and several full-length musicals. Courtney lives in Illinois with her husband and 3 children, where she co-owns a performing arts studio and youth theater with her business partner and best friend, her husband. We are here today to discuss her latest novel, Everything's Coming Up Rosie. Welcome to the show, Courtney.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Yes, I am so honored to have you on the show. Listeners, we have talked about the happy life of Isadora Bentley. It's actually been in a book flight on the show with Amanda Cox.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so fun.
Yeah, but I read that book and I'm from a town that's like right next door to one of the towns. And that novel, I was like, oh my gosh, I've never had this small town ever be set in a novel. So this is amazing. And it made me seek out every single one of your other books after I read that one.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much.
You are welcome. Well, I feel like we are so much more than our bios. So this is how I love to start the show is tell us a little bit about who you are.
Well, I'm a wife and a mom. I have 3 kids and now they're older now. So my youngest is actually my last one at home in high school. And then I have another son and a daughter. So, well, 2 boys and a girl. And yeah, my husband and I own a performing arts studio and youth theater here. So I feel like I'm always constantly pulled between the writing world and, sometimes when I get into a story, it's hard to get out of the story world. But then when I'm there with those kids and we're doing, directing shows and stuff, it ends up being, I don't know, like I end up realizing that it's like in real life, my life is really fun because of them. So those are the main like things that I end up doing is stuff in the theater and then stuff with my writing. So that's where I'm the happiest. That and then watching my kids do what they love. Those are the things I love the most.
Yeah. You had said 2 things that kind of made me think about is I've been having this conversation lately, like how as moms, we have so many plates spinning at the same time. And like, you're like, okay, I'm a writer, I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I own a performing arts center. I'm like, how do you do all of that?
Yeah, we don't sleep a lot. I mean, like we're in the middle of like a really busy season right now. And, just imagine like when kids are out of school, that's like the busiest time for us. So like summer is really busy. The end of the year is really busy with recitals and everything that we have going on. But, I think my husband keeps me sane. I mean, he had to keep me sane to even just today. It's like, don't try to pile everything on at once. Like start looking in digestible pieces because otherwise I will just like stress myself out so badly.
Yeah.
So I'm learning. It's a constant tug though. There's a pull between, when you're writing and then when you're doing it's difficult to have so many things that I love because you want to do them all really well.
Yeah.
And there have been seasons where I've had to step back from one or the other of those things because I realize I'm not doing this well and I'm not going to put the show in jeopardy because I'm doing a poor job. You know what I mean? So there's been seasons of that. And thankfully my husband is really, really supportive of my writing. And so I'm super lucky that way that he's anytime that I get really stressed or want to quit, he's like, you're not doing that. I don't think that's what you're supposed to do. So that's been a huge help. But yeah, I think just learning to say, okay, I'm really stressed. What can I take off my plate?
Yeah.
And how can I, eat this elephant one bite at a time kind of a thing. So, but I'm not going to lie. I mean, it's always been challenging because I think I've always had two different jobs going on at the same time. So,
Yeah.
and it's
Well,
hard because I love them both.
yeah. And I think that's what motherhood has kind of taught me. And I don't
Mhm.
know about you, but it's the busier my kids have got, it's like I have to say no to other things. And
Right.
again, because you want to do a good job with it. So you're
Yeah.
like, I just have to
Yeah.
say no. And it's made me have to make boundaries that maybe I wasn't good at making before.
Yeah, well, and a long time ago, I heard somebody that used to work at Disney say no is a complete sentence. And because sometimes it's like people will ask you to do things and you feel like you have to give them a list of reasons why that won't
Yeah.
work for you. But really you can just say, I'm not going to be able to do that. And that's fine. It's
Yeah.
like learning that it's okay to say, oh my gosh, I completely forgot about that. I always used to think that made me sound so incompetent. And so I would think in my head, like, why did I forget? What were all the other reasons? And now I'm just kind of like, I'm human. Sometimes I'm going to forget things, or sometimes I can't take other things on. And we just have to be, I think it's hard when you're trying to make everybody happy all the time. And so I've just kind of learned that sometimes you can't, and you do have to constantly prioritize and reprioritize. Okay, what is the most important thing? And I
Yeah.
mean, always it's going to be your family and your kids. So that makes that part of it easy. But when it's work, it's like all of these things are good, or all of these things are, deadlines. And so then you just kind of have to set it all up. And it's challenging though. It
Yeah.
is. It's hard.
Yeah. I love that way of like just you just have to prioritize and like
Hmm.
continue to reprioritize, like continue to
Yeah.
look at your time and how you're spending
Yeah.
it.
Because I think we will fill the time with other things. So I think it's like really, really hard to just go, wait a minute. Is that really how I want to be spending these few precious hours that I have? No.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like, how did I get into this? Yeah. So I feel like that makes it it just is like a regular thing now where I'm just like, okay, but what do I have to do today? And what do I have to focus on today? And that helps. So
Yeah. Well, you had your latest novel come out yesterday. Everything's Coming Up Rosie, and it's actually set in the theater world. But for
it
listeners that
is.
maybe haven't heard about it yet or had a chance to pick it up, can you tell them a little bit about it?
Yeah, I think I've only included theater in one other book. And I had somebody say something to me about including theater, and I was like, "What?" Like, when something's so regular in your daily life, you think it's really mundane.
Yeah.
It's like I'm not going to write about this because it's so ordinary to me. But then I realized, not a lot of people are in the theater, and I don't think you have to be in the theater to enjoy it. But it's a book about a woman who has always had this really big dream to be an actor, and I really wanted to explore the idea of like what happens when you have a dream, and two different things. Either you just can't quite make it happen, or you have it happen and it's not what you thought or expected. And just being willing to kind of pivot and say, and or just saying my priorities have shifted. I mean, it's kind of exactly what we were talking about. And it's, when you're young, these things seem really important. But then as you get older, it's like, wait a minute, now this is more important to me. So then you just are constantly adjusting. And so putting a character in that situation was really fun. So in her case, Rosie's case, she hasn't quite been able to make the dream happen for her. And she's home for a bridal shower, baby shower, for one of her best friends, and realizes everybody else is their life is exactly how it's supposed to be. And she just feels really behind. And while she's there, starts to realize, okay, I'm going to have to do something else. But she ends up getting a job offer to direct a production of Cinderella at what she thinks is a regional theater in Door County, Wisconsin. But when she gets there, she realizes she didn't read all the fine print, and it's actually a retirement community in Door County, Wisconsin. So she has to kind of make the decision, like, am I going to stay and direct Cinderella with a bunch of elderly people, or am I going to move back to my life, which is really just kind of fallen apart? So yeah, that's kind of in the long and short of it, in
Yeah.
in a nutshell, I guess.
Well, back to that Amanda Cox episode, she said that books that are catnip. And for me, it's when there's older characters in the book because I
Me
think they can
too.
bring so much wisdom and
Yes.
hilarious points to the novel that I love them. So I cannot
I
wait.
love writing older characters and I love writing younger characters and not only just like kids but like teenagers and I have both in this I have teenagers and then a teenager and then I also
Okay.
have some older characters and I think having older characters gives you a great catalyst for imparting wisdom
Yeah.
because the older people in our life they know so much more than we do and I think I know so much more than I did when I was younger and so being able to kind of take all of that and put it all into this book. It was that made it extra fun, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. You can add so many elements, I think, to the novel in
Yeah.
that way that gives it that
Yeah.
unique shift. Well, you have written many, many novels at this
I
point, but
have.
what have you learned about yourself through writing?
Well, I've learned that a couple of things. I don't think as a writer you can cram yourself into someone else's box. Like I think when I started, I was trying to like follow a formula or trying to figure out, okay, I'm going to write a book. How do I do that? And like
Mhm.
check off boxes. And that's really not how my creativity works. I think some people are great with that. I'm not. I
Mhm.
think there are as many ways to write a book as there are writers. And for me, I usually have a really loose outline and kind of it's called like pants is seat of your
Sure.
pants along the way and I just kind of I know the map of where I'm going but like I don't exactly know what all the detours and pit stops are going to be along the way and I really like it that way. I like being surprised by the characters and I usually have something thematic but all of the action comes from the character work that I do ahead of time and I learned to be really comfortable because I think when you see how other people do it you're like, oh, I'm doing it wrong.
Yeah.
And then you kind of have to realize, well, wait a minute, that doesn't actually work for me. I can't plot a novel. I wish I could. I've
Yeah.
tried. I've actually done it like twice and been like, that was so much easier. But it just 98% of the time, that's not how my creativity works. I don't get it all at the beginning. And so I find that like you just have to like settle in and you have to really be okay with all the rereading and editing and proofreading and changing. It's not like you get to write it and then just be like, it's done. I
Yep.
wrote it once and it's done. And I wish it was like that, but it's just not. So yeah, I've also learned that I am a person who does the best when I can stay in the story as long as possible. So I will sometimes write from the time I get up and I'll go for a walk and drink my coffee and then I write until my son comes home from school. And that's pretty much when I'm on deadline, that's pretty much my day. And a
Yeah.
lot of people cannot do that and they hate it and they think I'm crazy. And I'm like, I know. And sometimes I forget to get up and walk around, but that works really well for me because I want to hold all of it in my head for as long as possible.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think those are some things that I've learned about myself is just not to waste time wishing I was writing like a different person. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's silly.
And I could see where
So,
that's like, you're like cramming in that square peg into a circle hole, right? Of like you're trying to
right.
force yourself to be something that you're just not, and your brain doesn't
Yeah.
work that way. And
Yeah.
that's been the beauty of like watching my kids learn too, right? And I've homeschooled some of them to like my oldest goes to school, but it's their brains all work differently.
They
And you
do.
can't teach them the same way.
I've noticed that with working with kids too. It's like sometimes you'll be able to reach a kid so easily with
Yeah.
this, really tried and true method, but it might not work for everybody. I mean, some of them need to like see it and some of them need to hear it and some of them need to like think on it themselves, go away by themselves and then come back with it.
Yeah.
It's that kind of stuff that I mean, I don't know why it feels like, I mean, maybe it's because of social media and we all feel like we have to like compare ourselves to other people. And there's this great saying where it's like, I don't want to compete with anybody. I hope we all win. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I love that. I don't want to be in competition or feel like I'm, like I want to like, I want everyone to win all the time.
Yep. I always
So
think of like
yeah.
I'm a really good hype girl.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, exactly. That's great.
so I want all of us, it's like that
Yes.
rising tides, right? Or what's that saying?
Lift all
Rising
boats.
lifts
Rising
all
tides
boats.
lift all
Yeah.
boats. Yeah. Yep.
Exactly.
I love
So
it.
I
Yeah.
totally agree with that as well.
Yeah.
Well, what do you hope for readers? What do you hope they'll take away when they pick up Everything's Coming Up, Rosie?
With all of my books, I think I sort of had this epiphany well, it coincided kind of with 2020 with COVID and everything, but that's not really what it was for me. I mean, COVID, we own a performing arts studio,
Yeah.
so you can imagine what that did to our business. Our business is all about gathering people to
Yeah.
watch theater. And so for a whole year, we had an incredibly difficult time. But before that, my daughter had been diagnosed with thyroid cancer. And I think so it was that in 2018, and then in 2019 or 2020, my son broke his femur.
Wow.
And then we had COVID. And so it was kind of like one thing after another thing after another thing. My other son had broken his foot, and it just was
Yeah.
crazy. Like all of this stuff, it takes them out of the things they love, and you're watching people suffer. And then, with all the pandemic stuff, it just got to the point where I just felt like everything was so heavy.
Yeah.
And I was like, I didn't want my books to be heavy. I didn't want to spend time in dark, heavy places. And so I felt like that's when I really started to embrace. I don't consider my books to be fluffy, but they're lighter in tone
Yeah.
than, maybe some other books or maybe even what I was writing before. And it was very, very, I think it was one of the only like very specific decisions I made, because very often I feel like I'm kind of just like, oh, I'll try this, or oh,
Yeah.
let's do this or whatever. But this was like a conscious decision. I want to write something fun. And from that point on, I've realized like there is nothing wrong with wanting to be an author who just wants to put joy into the world. I know, like, I'm not trying to win prizes and awards. I'm not trying to like be super literary or make statements or push envelopes or anything. I am trying to be an author that people think of when they are in the middle of the heaviest season of their life. They can say, if I read that book, I'm going to be able to step out of that heavy season for the time that I'm
Yeah.
in that story world. And I know it's going to make me feel better and lighter, because I just think we need the mental escape. And I think that I learned that very, very much during that season, that very prolonged season, where I just was like, I started seeking out everything that would make me feel happier.
Yeah.
And I stopped watching anything like dark or heavy or emotional. I was like, if anyone dies in it, I don't want to watch it,
Yeah.
like that kind of stuff. And so it was very, very intentional. And so I think that's really what I want people to take away, is like a story that makes them think. I still think you can do that. And I think there can be poignant moments, but just without all of the, you're going to get a happy ending, and without taking people on a gut wrenching journey along the way. And that's really not my thing.
Yeah. And you still evoke emotion in your novels,
That's the
without
goal.
having
Yeah.
like, digging down into like that gut-wrenching part of it. And,
Yeah.
in fact, I read a lot of historical fiction, but that also can get heavy over time. So it's like,
Yeah.
I know, like, I have my go-to authors. You are one of them that I will be like, okay, I know I can pick up a Courtney book. And that one will be like the perfect palate cleanser to like the last really heavy
Right.
deep dive into history I did.
Right. And I get it, because we're mood readers, right? Like I'm
Yeah.
a mood reader. I mean, it's so funny. Before you started recording, we're talking about me reading like a thriller, and I'm like, who am I? I don't read thrillers. But for whatever reason, I was like, I kind of want to read this, or like cozy mystery type TV shows. Like I started watching The Rookie, and I started watching that after Christmas. My sister told me it was her favorite show, and I was like, all right, I'll try it. And then I got so hooked on it. And I'm like, I guess this, or like Only Murders in the Building, it's kind of like a cozy mystery. There's still
Yeah.
humor, there's still light stuff, and I love all of that. But I do feel like you can take people on an emotional journey without like pulling their heart out and ripping it to shreds, and then maybe putting it back together. I don't know.
Yeah.
So that's always the goal. But yeah, I feel like after those really, if you are a person who loves heavy, dark, emotional, sometimes you're like, okay, I just did that, now I need something
Yeah.
lighter. Then that's when I'm hoping that my books can come in to fulfill that need. you
Yeah.
know?
I was listening to an interview with Catherine Senner recently,
Uh-huh.
and
Yeah.
she had talked about how we read like rom-coms differently than we read thrillers, because you're going to get the happy ending. And so you read and
Right.
you're going along and you're thinking like, okay, I don't need to be like on the edge of my seat. Like,
Right.
when's the like next twist going to come that's going to tear my
Yeah.
heart out? And where you read thrillers very differently. I was like, that is so true. Because
It's
it's like
so
you just
true.
know your heart's going to be a little bit more protected.
Yeah, it's not like you're waiting for the next shoe to drop, or you're waiting for like it doesn't like engage your anxiety,
Yes,
and that's
exactly.
what I
It
want. I
doesn't
always
skirt that
sometimes,
fine.
Exactly. And I'll say that sometimes where I'm like, if you're anxious, if you're an anxious person, because that's another thing is like when you do have some anxiety going on, and I do, especially after 2018, like there's certain things where I'm just like, I can feel myself getting really
Yeah.
tense. And I'm like, that's terrible for me. My cortisol levels are spiking because of this. So it's nice to have something that's like, it's still going to be, swoony and it's still going to be a good story, but it's not necessarily, you're going to be able to root for these characters, but it's just not going to drag you through all of the hard, dark,
Absolutely.
heavy stuff. That's the goal. That's the goal.
Yes. Well, was there a book that you read when you were younger that made you think you wanted to be a writer?
Well, I think it's funny because my most of my love of story started in the theater. And
Okay.
so which is interesting because I'm not a person who always wanted to be a writer. I always wanted to be an actor, but characters I think are the thing that makes that's what I love. I
Yeah.
love creating characters. And for me, Anne of Green Gables was the book when it's so funny because I'll never forget I was sick home from school in sixth grade and my mom, we had video stores then. And my mom went to the video store because I don't know, took pity on me and she brought home some Disney movies and some, kid friendly movies. And one of them was the Anne of Green Gables, the 1985 Anne of Green Gables. And I was like, what is this? I thought it
Yeah.
was I remember being such a brat about it because I should have been like, thank you so much for getting me something to watch. No, I was a brat. But then I watched it, and I mean, talk about ripping your heart out. That it does rip your heart out a little in one place, but the characters
Yeah.
in that story. So then I read the book, fell in love with it. I mean, absolutely, still to this day is one of my all-time favorite stories of all time, and one of the most memorable characters I've ever read. And I think if you can have a character that sticks with you like that, and you're cheering for her so much,
Yeah.
it's just, yeah, I love that. I will always love that story. And I have the movie, like I figured out how, because it's not really streaming, you have to kind of dig
Yeah.
around for it. And so I found it and I'm like, okay, I don't know why. I feel like rewatching it is going to be like an event in my life. I don't know why. I think
You got
because
to wait for
when
the right
something's
time.
yes, and it's so pivotal when you're like a kid that I'm like, I want it to still have that same, that same like, and I think it will because there's other movies that I've rewatched and books that I've reread and been like, oh yeah, I still love this story. So that would be mine for sure.
For book club, we read it maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and it was
Really?
so interesting because I resonated with different characters in
Oh
the
yeah,
novel
that
because now that I'm a mom, right?
yeah.
And so like I still loved it. It just was I resonated so differently with the characters at this stage of my life.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to see if I mean that's how I feel when I watch Gilmore Girls. I'm like, well, at this point, I don't really I don't really agree with some of the stuff that I used to be like,
Yeah.
somebody said they're team Emily all the way now because they realize she's the only sane one in the show. I'm just like, I kind of agree with that.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's off topic.
Well, how in your busyness do you find time to read?
Audiobook. 100% audiobooks. When well, and because I think because of the theater background, I'm pretty critical of audio and it took me a while to warm up to it.
Yeah.
But once I did, I just like, I realized I can, I walk almost every day unless it's raining outside like it is today. I mean, I am just like listening to audio in the car, listening to audio when I even started bringing my AirPods to the grocery store because I'm
Yeah.
like, I think what's great is you can pair it with something you don't really enjoy. Like for me, cooking.
Yeah.
I really don't like to cook. And it makes the thing you have to do so much more enjoyable. But I last year almost exclusively read via audio. Now that means I'm not reading early copies of anything,
Yeah.
but it's okay because I still feel like I'm getting so much more story because of it. And because I write so much on my computer, I have very little like interest in spending any more time on my device reading,
Yeah.
and so because I'm reading my own words so much, and it just kind of I think it just kind of makes it just a much more enjoyable experience. And I really can appreciate the voice acting that goes into it. I mean, that's hard.
Yeah.
That's hard. And when someone's good, it's like, oh my gosh, they can make the whole story come alive. So that's a huge part. I don't think I would read even half as much if I didn't have audiobooks. So
Yeah.
that's a big thing for me right now.
I always credit how clean, well, I mean, I'm going to say clean in loose terms, but my house is as clean as it is thanks to audiobooks.
Yeah, it is, right?
Yeah. And I think it's called habit stacking. Like when you put
Yes.
like that
Yep.
task you don't want to do with something pleasurable.
Yes. Yeah. And then you're like, oh my gosh, I just folded all this laundry. Oh my goodness, my bathroom's clean now. Yeah,
Yeah,
I just unloaded the dishwasher because thank you, audiobook.
exactly.
Yeah, for sure. I've always got one going, almost always. And I get them from all different places, to like the library, and I have Spotify, and I have Audible, and I
Yep.
have different, Libro FM, and I'm just like trying to get them from everywhere I can because I love them so much.
Yeah. Have you listened to your own books on audio after they've come out?
Not, you know what? I shouldn't say that. I have listened to pieces of them.
Okay.
But it's really weird. It's really weird. I mean, I think I've only gone back and reread one of my books after it was published because I had gotten the rights back, and I was putting it back up, and I needed to
Sure.
check some stuff just for, just to make sure that it was still like grammatically the way that I wanted it and everything. But other than that, no, I have a hard time reading my own stuff.
Yeah.
It's
I was
awkward.
just wondering because you had made the comment about like how the voice actors, right? And I was just wondering if
Yeah.
that changes for you, like being the author of your own story, but if that changed it for you.
Well, I will say there are two. I shouldn't say that because you know what? I actually just remembered I did listen to A Cross Country Christmas this past Christmas. I listened to that, and I was super happy with the. I mean, I had listened to enough of it when I was doing the audiobook, but
Sure.
then to be able to just sit and listen to it like as a reader
Yeah.
almost. And I listened to a good portion, not the whole thing, of The Happy Life of Isadora Bentley. And that narrator also does Rosie and My Phony
Okay.
Valentine. And she's one of my favorite. I mean, those two narrators are two of my favorites. I'm so happy. I feel like her name is Georgina Marie. I feel like she brought Isadora to life
Yeah.
so perfectly that I was like, oh my gosh, like I can see her because of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a very, very fun experience. But normally I just get a little like, oh my gosh, like I wrote this. There has to be some distance. It has to, like, I don't think I listened to Isadora until it had been out for at least a year.
Yeah.
I think I listened to it last summer because I remember I was driving to the theater and I remember hearing it, and something she did made me laugh. It wasn't like, oh, I'm so funny. It was like her
Yeah.
interpretation of something made me laugh. And I love that. So yeah,
That's
it
really
was
cool.
it was a very fun experience. Yeah.
But I could see where, yeah, that distance, you're like, I don't
It's
want to. Like,
weird.
I remember thinking, to this day, like I remember I hated my voice growing up. Like,
Hmm.
but I think of like the old school answering machine, right? You'd hear yourself like call in, like, hey mom, and like I hated the sound of my voice. And I'm like, it's so funny that today I'm now a podcast host. But like
Right.
it doesn't irritate me when I'm editing. Like it just is, but I don't ever once it's published, I don't ever go back and listen,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. It's probably a really similar thing where you're just kind of like, oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm the same way.
So, well, you have been so gracious to bring a book flight with you today. Can you tell us how you chose these books?
Well, I went back to look at books well, Anne of Green Gables is one of them. So
Yeah.
we've already kind of talked about that a little bit. But I mean, that I feel like is just pivotal to my growing up years, more than any other book. Although I will say this is a little bonus book flight. So when I was growing up for a book report in school, I read this book called Alex, the Life of a Child.
Okay.
I cannot remember the name. The girl, it was written by a man named Frank DeFord,
Okay.
and I think that was his last name. And it was like a biography of their life. His daughter had cystic fibrosis.
Wow.
And there had
Okay.
been a TV movie with Craig T. Nelson and Bonnie Bedelia which is crazy because they were in Parenthood all these years later. It's also crazy that I remember this because I was
Yeah.
very young. I also don't think I should have been allowed to watch it because it would talk about ripping your heart out.
Yeah.
But I remember reading it, and I remember this is so funny, the power books, and I have I'm sorry that I'm going off script here because I didn't even tell you this before, but I remember at the time that I had to read it. I mean, it doesn't end well.
Yeah.
I went into the bathroom and I locked the door and I read the last like chapter and bawled my eyes out. And I will never forget like how powerful it was. And how the way he told this story, just like it was so moving. Um, but I mean, I also cried a lot with Anne of Green Gables. So, I mean, I think there's just some things that are just so, you just get so invested in
Yeah.
the characters and the story. And I think story is so powerful, so, so powerful. So those are definitely, ones that I think made a huge impact on me when I was young.
Yeah, and I
Um,
think that I've thought about this a lot too because my like all-time favorite book has been The Nightingale for like 10 years.
okay.
And because
I
it
haven't
like
read that one.
ripped my heart out. And it was like the
Yeah.
first book I remember as an adult like giving me that emotional ride. And like to this day, I sit here and think about. I'm like, well, I wonder if that's why I love it so much because it like touched my soul, like it made
Right.
me sob
Right.
like,
Right.
about this book, and like because I was so invested in the characters and the story,
Yeah.
and so I
I mean,
wonder if that's why.
there's this when it can pull you in like that. I mean, there's something special about that, and I just think I feel like as a storyteller, to be able to have people love your characters that much. I mean, that's incredible. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Other books that I chose. So I'm in like different genres here, but one, I got really into memoirs at the end of last year, and one that I read that has stuck with me was Dinner for Vampires by Bethany Joy Lenz.
Yeah.
She's an actress from One Tree Hill, and I watched that during COVID. I never watched it before. And then during COVID, you know how like what else are we going to do but
Yeah.
watch
Got to fill
television?
my
It's
time.
yeah, exactly. And I ended up watching I watched I've watched I think any like teen drama I've probably watched it. I got very sucked into that. But that was fascinating. I thought that was a fascinating book
I
and
saw
I
that one
listened to
all
it.
over too. I haven't
Oh my
read it yet, but
gosh.
I saw it
It's really
everywhere.
good.
Okay.
And she's a great narrator. And so like hearing her tell the story, I thought was even more powerful. But I grew up in a religious background, obviously not the same kind of religious background as what she's
Sure.
taught, because it's about her being in a cult. But it's interesting just how things can get twisted. And you can see, and I thought what was so great about that book was it's almost like a warning for people because she explains how it happened and how she got to where it was. And it's not like, I think when you're not in that world, you can go, well, how could you be in a cult and not
Yeah.
realize? But then when you read the book and you're kind of like, oh, I do understand. I mean, when you have people who are just very narcissistic and manipulative and um, know how to say the right things
Yeah.
and know how to,
To pull you in.
yeah, to prey on people that are, vulnerable and exploit that, I guess. I thought that was incredibly fascinating. It was a really interesting character study of characters that I wouldn't normally come into contact with. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So I thought that was really great. And then the third one, and this is one of my favorite books that I've probably one of my top books I've read in the last 10 years, um, was The Good Part by Sophie Cousins,
Yeah.
which I just thought, I think that might have been the first book of hers that I read. I've since read all of them. And it's got a little magical realism in it because
Okay.
it's one of those things that makes you kind of go back and examine your life. Like it's just, have you read that one?
I haven't. No.
Okay, so at the beginning of it, I won't spoil anything, but at the beginning of it, she's basically just kind of she's young and she's lamenting like the bad things in her life, and she's like, "Can I just skip to the good part?" And
Yeah.
so when she wakes up, there's some stuff happens, and she wakes up and she's older, and it's sort of like a 13 going on 30, looking back at your life kind of a thing, and appreciating what you have, and it does just sort of make you like appreciate 20 years from now you're going to realize this was the good part. And then
Yeah.
it's just really I just thought it was really interesting, and it just hit me just right at the right time. So it was a
Yeah.
really good one.
I definitely have to add that one to my list because I feel like, sometimes you're in the thick of it. Back to kids, right? You're in the thick of it with kids
Yeah.
and you think the days are so long. And I
Yeah.
have to sit here and be like, people tell me I'm going to miss this. But it's like I have to constantly remind myself, like, stay present, stay present, stay present,
Yeah.
like not want
Yeah.
to wish, like, okay, can we have the day when we don't have a tantrum anymore? It's
Right.
like you
Right.
find yourself wishing for that. But I'm
Yeah,
like,
you're like,
wait,
am I really going to miss the tantrums? Am I
my
I don't
husband and
think
I have that
I
conversation often.
am.
Like, will we really miss this part?
Right. Right. No, you won't. I can promise you. And I will say, I mean, I have teenagers, and my older two are now in their 20s, and there's something really it's weird, parenting adults because they don't need you. And so
Yeah.
then you're just sort of like, I think I'm just more here for like friendly advice when you need it. I can't discipline you or punish you or, there's none of that stuff. But it's interesting. Every single phase that my kids, every single stage of life, I have absolutely loved. I mean,
Yeah.
there's never a time. It's the same way that I am with like, I wouldn't go back to high school. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not like, would I like to be able to like maybe have fewer, low back pains? Yes. That I didn't have, maybe wouldn't I have when I was younger, but I mean, for the most part, I'm like, I've loved every stage for different reasons. So yeah, and they're all challenging in a different way, and they're all
Yeah.
wonderful in a different way. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Embrace it for what it is, I think, is your, yeah,
Exactly.
your
Exactly. But
message.
you will not miss the tantrums. That I can promise you. That I've
Well, I'm
never
glad to hear
missed.
that.
Yeah.
I don't need to
Yeah.
just embrace that moment then.
Right.
Yes.
Right. No.
Well, also, thank you so much for bringing those books with you today. How I love to end our show is with our bonus pairings, and these are a speed round you can answer really quick.
Ooh,
Are
okay.
you a rereader?
No, never.
Okay.
No,
All right.
almost never.
And then this, you might have already answered this, but we'll see. What is one book you've read that has changed your life?
Um, I mean, aside from the Bible, because I definitely think the Bible has been life-changing.
Yeah.
Um, I really would probably would have to say something like an Anne of Green Gables. I
Okay.
keep going back to it. I
Yeah.
just loved it so much.
If only L.M. Montgomery was here today.
I know.
So, where is your favorite place to read?
Well, now that I'm doing audio, I'm such a like a productivity person that I think my preference would be to read when I'm doing something like prepping my meals
Yeah.
like that. It's just it has gotten to be like a really relaxing thing for me.
Yep.
So yeah, my husband and I had we had to have a discussion about my headphones being in all the time because he would try to talk to me when he would come in the room, and I'm like, oh, I've got AirPods on, I can't hear you.
Yeah.
And so, I'm like, you can't take this away from me and he's just like, well, can you just maybe like put one in? I'm like, no,
Yeah.
I
This is
can't.
helping
I
me.
love you, but this is making me cook. Yeah.
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 If you want your meal tonight, here we are.
Right. Exactly. This is the trade-off.
Yeah. Well, and then lastly, what are you reading next?
Oh my goodness. Okay, what am I going to read next? Right now I'm reading Rocky Road by Becky Wade.
Okay.
She's a really good friend of mine. I'm reading that
Yeah.
one right now. Well, I'm listening to it. I don't
Yep.
know. Some people don't think that's reading, but that's the one I'm listening. I'm in the middle of that one.
It
So,
totally is. I
yeah.
actually did a whole
Right.
little
I
deep dive
agree.
on researching, like, and how, like, the stats of, like, it really is reading.
It is. I agree with you.
So wonderful. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show with me today.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode today with Courtney Walsh, including her book flight of some of her favorite books. You can find all the books we talked about on the show today at bookishflights.com. We will be taking a break from the BFF Book Club for the summer, but stay tuned for our next read in August featuring What the Silents Say by Emerson Ford. This book is a World War II historical fiction novel based off letters she found of her grandfather's written between him and his brother during the war. Emerson is also a military spouse, so she gives an honest take of what it looked like for the loved ones back home on the home front. That's it for today. Thank you so much for listening. As Emma Thompson said, I think books are like people in the sense that they'll turn up in your life when you most need them. Cheers to you, dear readers. Until next time.